Welcome to the Evangelistic House of God podcast.
Unscripted discussions on social issues from a Christian's perspective.
Hello and welcome to the Evangelistic House of God EHOG podcast. I am Pastor Rod Harris. This is Esther Smith.
Hi guys.
Hey, how you
y'all
doing?
What's
up
happening?
here?
All right.
And Pastor Steve, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited to be here today.
Oh yeah.
Me too.
It's a beautiful day. We actually got sunshine again.
Yeah.
Well, somewhat.
We do.
It's
We do.
overcast. You can see outside.
Yes.
It had been so gray and dark you couldn't even see your hand in front
That's
of you.
true.
It's just it's just freezing out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
too
cold.
cold.
Yeah.
It's too
Cold, but hey, we can't complain. We didn't have the snow that we would normally have.
No.
That's true.
And we only got a dusting, you know.
We gotta
Yeah.
pray for the
Last
night though. We gotta
Oh,
pray
yes.
for the night.
In Jesus' name.
Yeah.
Cast down all plans of snow.
Yes. In Jesus' name. Lift that right up.
So we're not out of the woods.
No.
I thought that was
I thought
nor'easter was going a little around us. I thought. No.
no, I got a weather alert on my phone. Saying, and my son came home excited. Snow day tomorrow. I said, what do you mean? The bus driver already told us. I was like, oh no, rebuke it and send him to school.
Well, yeah. And that's the problem. Why he's so excited not to be at school?
You know why? He could be at home eating all of the food I just bought.
I can't lie. I would have probably been excited
Right.
too.
You know?
Yeah, maybe if they have a snow day, I won't have to go to work tomorrow. And then that'll get excited. That'll get us excited.
Do we
What is
really
he
need?
saying that
Does he
for?
really need a snow day?
Hold on.
Man, I work hard.
He
I
don't be
didn't say
going
you
in.
didn't. You just don't go in.
No.
It don't mean I don't work. It's just hard.
First of all, but you said don't mean. You said if we have a snow day, I won't have to go in. You never
Well, I'm
do.
just saying, go to work. I won't have to dial in. Maybe they'll just shut down the whole system.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I hear you.
Oh my
One
goodness.
can hope. One
Yeah.
can hope.
I'm not mad at you.
All right, so look, y'all, I got a good topic today. I want to talk about the absence of role models.
That's really good.
Okay.
Wow.
So before I get into it, I'm going to
Okay.
read y'all a few statistics.
Okay.
Okay.
In reference to the general population, individuals raised in a father-absent environment demonstrate 5 times the average suicide rate, dramatically increased rates of depression and anxiety, 32 times the average rate of incarceration, decreased education levels and increased dropout rates, consistently lower average income levels, lower job security, increased rates of divorce and relationship issues, substantially increased rate of substance abuse, and increases in social and mental behavioral issues. Got a couple more for you.
Okay.
Teenagers without parental role models are 67% less likely to get a job.
Wow.
Young men with no male role models in their lives and women without mother figures struggle to keep their lives on track, and it's been found that men with no role model are 50% more likely to abuse drugs, and young females in the corresponding position are significantly more likely to drink to excess.
Ooh.
In total, more than a third of youngsters, that's 34%, admitted to having suicidal thoughts at some point. But this figure rose to 42% for those without positive figures in their lives.
Wow. That is heartbreaking.
It is. That's really
It is.
sad.
It's pretty sad.
That is heartbreaking.
You know, the first thing people think about is where's the fathers? But this is not just about fathers. This is just about role models. People that they can trust, that they can go to for spiritual guidance, for career guidance, for educational guidance.
Yes.
For guidance on their lives, how to be men, how to be women. I mean, the neighborhoods or the communities are really suffering because there's no active role models.
Yes.
And even in some of the households where we find role models or people that are doing the right thing or trying to stay close, they tend to work so hard
Yes.
that they're gone from the household and children are being raised by themselves. So even though that person or that father figure might be present in the household, it's not an active presence because they're typically working
all the time
or doing something different.
Yeah.
And the more these corporate jobs send people traveling across the globe,
Yes.
even in the middle class neighborhoods and the middle class homes,
Yeah.
you're still finding the same statistics, regardless to whether it's middle class or low class families.
You know, it brings me to thinking about the teachers, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was growing up, it was literally a rapid decline in the care that the teachers had in my earlier years versus my later years. And in the beginning, when I would go to school, it was like, if you don't get it, well, hold on, and it was like, I'm gonna help you and we gonna be there. And it was like, oh, I love Miss Clark. Like, I still remember Miss Clark, you know what I'm saying? And that was like 3rd grade. And I still remember Miss Brenner, and that was like 1st grade. But I remember those people. Yeah. And then it was like, as I got older, it was like, what's that math teacher name? Because he never was there anyway. He never helped. I don't forget the literature teachers, the lady with the glasses, because these people are not really instrumental in being role models like they used to back in the day. And I think it's like, of course it's probably about the times, and kids are a lot more difficult to deal with. And so it's like, skip them kids. I'm just about to do this job and go home. And it's really, I'm serious.
I don't know if it's...
I'm serious. That's the way it looks. That's the way it feels when you're in that situation.
I think even though it might feel like that situation, I think that a lot of it is because the culture has changed a lot. Not just for schools, but for those teachers as well. So they're not in a position where they get a chance to really focus on student behaviors, focus on student issues, and focus on the lack of training or education for those students. They have to meet certain criteria in order just to keep their jobs. Again, they're being paid to train children to pass a test.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the other thing about it, you did touch on it, was that the culture of these children nowadays is so different.
Yes.
And I think the difference between what you experienced when you were in the 3rd grade versus what you experienced in high school was, for one, they expected you to participate at a different level in high school.
Yeah.
When you were in middle school or elementary school, it might have been that your parent was more involved in the school activities.
That's true.
That might have made a difference as well.
That's so true.
So if your mom is present and you can see her up there all the time, the teachers get to know who she is, and they typically take more time out with those children.
Yeah. That's true.
You also see a lot of funding cuts in the schools as well.
That's so true.
And the teachers, they have to go out and they have to buy all of the supplies, and they either have way too many, that overcrowded classroom, or they have an undercrowded classroom.
Right.
Where the kids, and then a lot of the kids, unfortunately, they have attendance issues.
Yeah.
In the inner city, where they don't come to school every day, which is also a problem. And I also go back, it's just a different time.
Yeah.
Where kids are not as social. Because they don't have a lot of after-school programs like they used to back in the day. You used to be able to go take the kids to, or if you lived in the inner city, you could go to a rec center that was in your neighborhood.
Right.
You could play basketball, you could play track, you could join football, the Police Athletic League here in Michigan, that sponsor the the local football programs, and baseball.
Football and baseball and basketball.
So you had outlets. And then these coaches were really instrumental. And people always, could relate well to a coach because they spend a lot of time with you. They start to get into your, you motivated to play. And they're like, well, you can play, but you first got to take care of the classroom.
Because you got to be eligible to play.
You got to be eligible, and they care about your future, and they want you to go to college, and they want to help foster you, and they get really more into your life, Whereas a teacher will teach you something and then they're gone, for the day. But it seems like that coach has more of a bond
with them. Yeah.
But it depends, and because for me, it wasn't necessarily a coach. I had a marketing teacher who was so dynamic in high school that it really made me want to go to college and made me want to study marketing.
Okay.
Yes. Because he made it so fun where it was, so drab. He would come in and he would come in with a big duffel bag, and he opened his duffel bag out and he had big cars and planes.
Yeah.
And it was so corny and everybody would be laughing, but at the same time, we're learning.
Paying attention and learning.
Yeah, and he took time out to talk to you, and he was available, and he was in the neighborhood, and you walk up to him. We would see him, half a dozen times, even after I got out of school.
Right.
The first thing he wanted to know, did you go to school? Did you graduate? Did you go to college?
Right.
Did you do this? And even years later, this guy is still affecting me. He's influencing me. And it's like, man, I can't run into this guy without having these things again.
Right.
And it's
that
kind of thing does happen. But
I agree that teachers and educational counselors and people like that are in place, and they should be a positive role model. They should be active in children's lives.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that what society has done is really relied on them to be the parents,
I agree.
to be the teacher, to be the coach, to be the nutritionist, to be the guard. You know, and is that really fair that we put all of the onus on a teacher who typically makes a third of the average household salary? You know, to be all of this thing for all of these different people.
Well, I don't necessarily think that it's fair to put it all on them, but they are a part of the puzzle, and I think that they're a resource. I don't look at it as it's their job, but they're a resource that I can tap into to help me with my kid.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and they're not the only one. They also, going into the church, there's all manner of positive people to deal with, and the pastors and the ministers and lay members and people. That's where you can go. If you got a young man, that's the man place.
Yes.
You know, it takes. That's where the saying, it takes a village to raise a child in the right way.
Right.
And so you have to, as a parent, I'm looking for all manner of
Helps.
Resources,
Right.
helps everywhere I can get them,
Right.
to help me with my kid,
Right.
so that they're not just learning how to live life on YouTube.
Right, and I agree that the teachers are very instrumental, because sometimes they might spend more time with your children than you do. You know, you get a kid, especially when they're younger, they be with that one teacher for almost 8 hours out the day. You know, because they don't get to go around and do the extra teachers until they get older, and so it's like, you got my kid almost as much as I got my kid. Help out a little bit. Could you, could you be a little bit more, you know?
I get that. And I understand that there's an expectation that there'll be a positive influence on them. I guess when I say an active role model, I'm talking about people that are actively focused on your development and your growth as an individual.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to put on a teacher who has
I
6 classes
that.
with 40 children in each class.
True.
I mean, they actually got a tutor and deal with over 100 children a day.
Yeah.
And to be instrumental in each of their lives is probably a long shot. They can pick and choose, and they sometimes will do that.
Yeah.
But typically, those are the children that are the worst of the class.
That's true.
They get all of that attention.
I guess the thing, and I agree with you 100%, but I think that one thing that you need to do is sit down with your youngster and find out where their interests lie.
True.
And try to work with that. Number one, I think that the best teaching you can give a person, it starts at home. You got to be able to spend quality time with your kid. Now, I know we talked about other people, but I can't dismiss the fact that a daughter needs a mother and a father.
Agreed.
And the son needs the same. He needs a mother and a father who is first actively in their lives.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting to.
And the thing is, you can work a long shift and all of that stuff, but it does not take away your responsibility as a parent. You brought this kid into this world, and it's up to you to see them all the way through.
Sure.
And that's what I'm saying is, when I'm active in my kid's life, I want to know what you find important to you. Do you want to do karate? Let's go do some karate. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? I'm not going to leave you to the television just to let the TV raise you and then complain and say, oh, I'm so tired when I get off work. No, that's not a good excuse.
It's not.
There's a kid that's depending on you.
True.
Right,
I
so
agree.
I think we're agreeing that it all boils back down to being raised the right way.
Absolutely.
It all boils down to the home life, starting there.
Yes.
And that's what I was talking about when you said it was different for you when you were a youngster, because your mom, I know for sure, that she was very instrumental in y'all schooling.
True. Mm-hmm.
She would go to the school, she would spend time with the teachers, they knew her name, they knew who her children were. And those things are important when you're trying to build a relationship and help to foster the raising or the development of a child.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Is to make sure that you are involved. Now, what I have seen on the other hand of that, so our church, we do some voluntary tutoring at one of those neighborhood elementary middle schools. Mm-hmm. And what we've seen is that we don't get any participation from the parents.
Sure.
So we are an outside organization that under our community development or our community benefits area has decided to go along and try to help some of these students who are 4 and 5 grades below their reading levels to try to bring them back up to speed so that they can pass to the next classes.
Right.
And what you get out of their parents when you try to get them engaged is I'm busy or I'm tired or just no or don't answer the phone.
Right. That's
you get
true.
children that show up to school. And one boy came to school, he unzipped his coat, he didn't have a shirt on under it. I was like, where's your shirt? He's like, well, my mama was asleep, so I just put my jacket on the left. You know, and so things like that are really what's helping to ruin these children. And that's, I mean, don't get me wrong, those are some, extreme. I want to say extreme, but it's probably more prevalent or more
than we know.
Yeah, probably more of the norm than it should be.
Yeah.
But what about these children that are older than that, these teenagers? And this is where it really gets settled.
Yes.
Is because these teenagers are not prepared for real life. They're not prepared to go out into the job market and create a position or a niche for themselves, with or without college. They typically will make less money, and they are on the suicide watch list.
Yeah, and that's sad. That suicide is really scary.
You brought up the church, Pastor, and the church has always been supposedly the cornerstone or the staple for the community for people to come in and get the help that they need.
Sure.
We also did another podcast about how difficult it is to get these
people in the
children or
church.
these people even to come to church.
True. Right.
And in most cases, regardless to how bad the need is, they don't want to get it from the church because they don't want to give or do anything to receive it.
Right.
And how do we help to change that culture? How can we get engaged to help people see the church differently and start using us for the intended purpose?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know that's something that we've been trying to solve. It's a question that we've been trying to solve. And we, you know, the thing that we will always do is we will always continue to reach out to the community and try to, you know, find programs and things that they can get into. And if they won't come into the building, we actually go out, right? And so you talked about some of the volunteering efforts that we do with tutoring, and we actually go out and do other things in the community and whatnot. But the thing is, and I know it starts at home again. We cannot go into the house and drag everybody out and make them come out. So if the parent won't come into the building and receive help, the kids aren't going to do it either.
Right.
And you know, we've seen that too, where the parents will say, hey, you know, they have 4 or 5 little kids, and they'll open the door to the church and
throw them in,
shove them all into the door and shut the door and go back home.
Yeah.
But again, is it fair for you to walk away and then we are supposed to be the babysitter for your kids?
Yep, we do it.
Yeah,
but
I mean, because we're obligated to do it, and we love to do it. Maybe you know they'll love it so much, you know, they'll go back and say, hey mom, you know, can we come back? But it's still, it's a lack of parenting. It's a lack of a role model at home. There's nobody to look to
when you get home
for a
for
kid,
the most of the time.
Because the parent doesn't value education. The parent doesn't value church and the morality and all of the things spirituality that the church would stand for.
Yeah.
And so it makes it very difficult for that kid to succeed, because now if they succeed, they did it against all odds.
That's true. Because even when they throw them in, they throw them in for the hours that we're there. Yeah. And so we love them and nurture them and teach them that for that time. But then the 90% of the time when they're with their parent, what's going on then? You know?
It's sad. I mean, the other thing, you know, we talked about spiritual guidance. We talked about educational guidance. Let's talk about career guidance, career coaching. A lot of these children, they don't even know how to prepare themselves for a job interview.
True.
Let alone pass one. They don't know how to write resumes. When they get on the job, they don't know how to behave. And because they don't know how to do those basic things, they typically don't last on the jobs long, or they stay in these menial jobs with low income wages, and they never get out of it. And so is it incumbent upon the actual employers to take more time with these children, give them a chance, and then kind of help coach them through how things should work as an employee? Or is it kind of like, you know, checking the list, you didn't do this, this, and this, you're fired, go get a job down the street?
Well, most jobs will tell you that they're not starter school, they finishing school.
True.
And people are offering money for a qualified candidate to come in and do a certain thing, and they're expected. I mean, you know, I don't want to bring somebody in and say I want him to machine this widget, right? And then I got to first teach him discipline and self-control, and you know, it's like I'd rather not. I move
I'm
on
just
to
gonna
somebody
get somebody
else.
who already has all of those qualities.
Or maybe I need to move my business somewhere where I can find that type of a
Probably is
person.
readily available.
Right.
Yeah, and I keep bringing it back to the parents. And the thing is, you might look at the parent, and if the kid is not interested, maybe the parent is struggling also for a job. But the more they involve themselves in the kid's life, they can go see the counselors together.
Yes.
They can find out about the colleges together.
Yes.
And even if they hadn't went to college, even if they hadn't finished high school, you know, it would seem as though you would want a better life for your
child.
kids.
Yes.
Not to spoil them with everything you can buy them, but to give them something that will last,
Give them
that they will
responsibility.
be able to do something with.
and accountability.
And so again, I put the onus once again on the parent, because the teachers and all of these support groups cannot go into the household and drag these people out.
Right.
The parent is going to have to find a way to stimulate themselves to help their own children.
That's true.
So
That's
let's
my
just
opinion.
okay, and
Go ahead.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? It should start at home. Let's take that out of the equation, the home life.
Okay.
And I say that only because there are some people, I don't care how much you scream and bark about how much they should be doing it, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
That woman, that little boy showed up in the middle of the winter with a
no
coat on with no
Yeah,
shirt.
I mean.
She not hearing you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She was asleep with her boyfriend and told the little boy, go to school. So he just ran out and went to school by
Right, and
himself.
she don't even know if he got there or not.
So my point is, then what? So now what? So now we got this society, we got this community of these children that are turning into young men and women who are suicidal, who are idle with drugs. They are, alcoholics at a young age.
Yes.
They can't get these jobs. What can we do? And I guess, and I'm not asking you to solve this, and this is probably a really good question for those people that are watching or listening, to kind of let's brainstorm together, comment, talk to us, send us an email or something about some of the ideas that you've employed in some of your communities. What can we do as a people?
I think that we should be doing more like what we said. Like it's going to take more than just our church to go out to the community,
Right,
and to volunteer. We all have to get involved. If you're a person that has good, morals and values, go out and volunteer at your local school and be somebody else's mother. Because when you go to those schools to check on your kid, it's some other kids there that's going to be like, what about me? It's going to happen. So if you spending more time on your child, you can also touch other people. So you know what I'm saying? You can go out there and you can volunteer and you can be that role model that somebody is looking for.
Right.
Because otherwise, they're going to look at the wrong. They're going to be looking at Lil Wayne, and they're going to be looking at, the next wrong thing, Young Thug, and all of these people, because that's the next thing that they see. That's what's raising them. If you're not there, if we're not there, then the TV will be.
I was I used to go to the same car wash every day on my way home from work. And the young guy that used to drive my car, he walked up to my window one day and he tapped on the glass, and I opened the door and he says, excuse me, what do you do? And I said, what? And he said, what do you do for a living? And so I told him, and he's like, can I have a card? I need a job. And at first I thought to myself, man, drive the car and get away from me. But then I thought, this is my responsibility. This is why I'm where I'm at, right?
Exactly, so you can help others.
So I reached in the little box and I gave him 3 cards. And I said, here go my card. Don't lose it. Call me and I will give you a job. And he's like, okay, thanks. And he shut the door and he drive the car off, whatever. And I went back the next day and I didn't see him no more. I didn't think nothing of it. Well, he called me about 2 weeks later.
Okay.
And he said, I wanted you to know I still got your card, but I got another job the next day, so I didn't bother to call you.
Oh, okay.
And I said, well, did you land in a good spot? He said, yeah, I'm really liking what I'm doing. And he was working for some shipping company.
Okay.
But he really liked what he was doing. He said, honestly, I don't think I was cut out for the IT stuff, but I would have took a chance if you'd have gave it to me. I said, well, if you change your mind, call me back. My whole point for telling that story is that this young man saw me as a role model,
yes,
or somebody that he wanted to emulate just by the kind of car I drove, the suit I had on. He watched me every day,
right,
come to the car wash, and he had the gumption enough to say, hey, what do you do? How can I be like that?
Right.
I've also worked with a guy that worked at the restaurant inside the office center that I work in.
Okay.
And he would take out the trash and mop the floors every day. And he walked around with these headphones on and he mumble rap like this. and he walk with his mouth twisted, and he never speak. And you say hello, and he just look at you. And he never speak. Mm-hmm. And I watched him dump that trash for over a year. And one day I stopped him. I said, take that out your ear for a second. Because he's a young black guy.
Right.
And he popped it out. He looked at me like he wanted to fight. This attitude. I said, why are you so angry? And why don't you ever speak to me? Do you like mopping that floor at that restaurant? It's cool. I said, would you want to do something different or better? You know, would you like to work in one of these offices out here that you see these men walking in and out of?
Right.
I mean, it's cool. I said, well, here go my card. Mm-hmm. You ever get tired of dumping trash and want a real job, come talk to me. Mm-hmm. He dumped that trash until their store closed. Mm-hmm. I watched him every night stand on the bus stop, catching the bus back and forth to work. And, you know, and it's almost like, man, what else could I have done?
You couldn't have paid him to get the job. You tried to pay him.
I hate to say it, but it almost goes back again. It's the self-determination of that individual. If you're going to take the parent out of the equation,
right,
then it is up to that person to be motivated enough to see something that he wants and then go after it.
Yes.
So again, succeeding against the odds because everything is set up for him to fail.
Right.
But there's something in him that will spark an interest that for him to better himself and better or herself or in their life. Yes. But I do understand what you're saying is that making yourself available, you know, giving them that card or the opportunity for them to to increase their life is throwing that life raft out there.
I agree.
Which is really great. And I think, like you said, we need more of that. We need more community involvement. You know, the thing is when people get together, we can create change. Sure. We can beat down, the local governments and the state governments to also help us with money and funding for programs and to have more things to come in like Big Brothers and Big Sisters and mentoring things, programs and stuff, where there are people also that would love to do stuff like that, but they don't know how to get involved. They don't know where to plug in at.
True.
Right.
We built a nonprofit called Bright. Mm-hmm. It's bridging roles in technical education.
Right.
And the whole point of the nonprofit was to allow an opportunity for people to get retooled to go back into the workforce or to gain technical skills that will prepare them for work.
For the workforce, yes.
And we offer this training for free. And I'm just giving you an idea of some of the issues that we have in our communities.
Sure.
This training is offered for free at one of our activity centers in the neighborhoods.
Right.
And the only charge was for the materials to actually train in the class. So you needed a book, you needed the pencil and a notebook and the pads and stuff. And it was a nominal fee. It was like under $20.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We would give out the notices months in advance. And man, we could not get 5 people to attend those classes.
That's so true.
And until we actually started working with the local MESC office to start giving us people that could actually come to the class and other partners to start paying for the materials, that we started to see, some pickup in it.
Some traction.
And I understand that some things start out slow.
Yes.
It's been a couple of years, and it's a little too slow for the area that it's in because they need it so badly.
Hard.
Yes.
And it's like, it's almost like you can't give them a handout. They won't even take it.
Because they lack the motivation. Because let me tell you, a lot of the times the problem is that when someone sees someone like you, they don't want to do what you do to get where you at. They just want your shirt. They just want your suit. They just want to rock what you did. They want to just rock your watch. And it's like, it's going to take more than that. You got to love yourself enough, because at the end of the day, if you got my watch, if you got my suit, if you got my shirt, you're still going to be you. You're still not going to be him. You're not going to be him. You're not going to be me. You got to love yourself enough to do it for you.
Right.
To sustain it, so that you can do it, and then you'll find out that you don't even want his watch. You like plainer watches because that's who you are. Right. You know what I'm saying? But it's so, and I don't even know why I'm saying. I didn't even mean to say that. That's but if somebody obviously need to hear that, it's still going to start with you loving yourself enough for you to want it. You know what I'm saying?
Outside your comfort zone.
And stop looking at the material stuff, because the material stuff, you still not going to be Steve. You're not gonna be Ryan. You're not gonna be Esther. You're only gonna be you. And at the end of the day, you're not gonna be happy with yourself if you don't really do the things it takes for you to be you and for you to be successful.
Well, you're talking about
as
real
yourself.
change, real transformation.
Right.
That is sometimes hard to obtain.
Yeah, I was just going to bring it back to the church again. And the church is really a place where you can get all of those things that we're talking about.
I agree.
Where you can get the financial understanding and the help with going to school and learning how to cope with stresses and peer pressures and
the careers,
bullying, careers, or whatever the issues are, because there are many that you named in those statistics. There's also help for the parents as well.
True.
Because then the parents now have a support group that will stand with them and help them learn how to parent.
Yes.
I know that's people don't want to hear that, but that's what the church is there. The church is a backbone for the community.
True.
And everything that's needed in the community, the church is there to help provide.
Agreed.
And that's how it is. The church has everything that you need to live a wonderful and a successful life, not just for you, but also for your children.
But you got to
And to
get
build
in
that
there.
legacy
But
for
you
your
got to
children.
go
That's
in
right.
there.
But you got to come into the building.
gotta
Everybody,
go there.
the thing is you have to take a chance.
Yes.
Right.
You know, you want something different for yourself, but you're unwilling to do something different to get it. Well, then you're not going, that's insanity.
Exactly.
You gotta try
do it.
something new. And if you
Yes.
tried it and it don't work, and don't tell me about church hate, I don't want to hear that.
Right.
But if you go in and you try to see, not just in our church, just go to a church in your community, find out, plug yourself in for not just for you, for your children's sake. If you won't do it for yourself, it's like the old commercial say,
Right.
do it for the loved ones in your life.
Exactly. And I agree.
This is a really good conversation. And I think what we're boiling down to is that it's not necessarily a lack of role models. Sometimes there's a lack of participation or a lack of understanding about how to seek or even get out of your own comfort zone to
True.
retrieve coaching or mentoring from a role model.
Yes.
There's plenty of them out there. Like I said, if you got some thoughts about how to do some community organizing or to help some young people along with some coaching or mentoring, or if you want to get involved in some of the things that we're doing, hit us up at podcast@ehogministries.com. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You know the lines. We are on Speaker. We are on iTunes, Google
Right.
Play. We are everywhere you want to find
Yes.
us. So give us a shout. Thanks for joining us. God bless you. Take care.